lunch and waiting to come back into the jury room, that you were in the lobby, that someone may have said something to you or in your presence about this case. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell me specifically what was said and what happened?
Where I first caught on to the conversation was that Miss Schenecker, thank you, had to be insane to go up and put a gun to her child's head. And that's whenever I stepped in and said, I'm a juror on the trial, please do not discuss any further.
And what happened then?
I believe her exact words were, we can't discuss anything about it, and I go, no, nothing, I'm a juror.
And then what happened?
And that's whenever I stepped into the back door and looked for a bailiff.
Okay, all right. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you a very important question. You were there, and of course you heard that comment. Did anything about that comment made in your presence or that exchange impact in your mind your ability to be fair and impartial in this case?
No, sir, did not.
Okay. All right. Questions by the state?
Briefly, thank you. The next couple of questions shouldn't surprise you given our week of jury selection. But the first question is, do you have any doubt in your mind that that person's statement to you would invade your deliberative process, your verdict?
No, it would not.
Okay. And you're still mindful that your verdict must be based only on what's produced in court, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Any questions?
No questions, sir.
All right, thank you, ma'am. We'll let you step back into the jury room. Okay, having made this inquiry, I'll simply turn to the state.
Nothing from the state?
Nothing from the defense.
Okay. All right. And with that, are we ready to bring the jury back in? And
Yes, sir.
The state to call us next witness.
Yes, sir.
Judge, the only thing that we forgot to do when we came back out, we discussed it in chambers, was invoking the rule.
Yes, you did not invoke the rule. You're doing that now?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, now I'm going to turn to the state and defense. I want you to bring into the courtroom right now all witnesses who are present in the courthouse right now. Go ahead and bring them in the courtroom.
No, Mr. Shaw.
No, right there is good. All right, I'll ask the state and defense to both look around. Are these all of your witnesses who are present at this time in the courthouse?
Yes.
Defense?
Yes, Judge.
All right, gentlemen, pay close attention. The court is invoking a rule of procedure that requires each of the witnesses to remain outside the courtroom until all testimony has been presented in this case. While you are outside the courtroom and until all testimony has been presented, you are court ordered not to discuss this case or your testimony with anyone. You may, however, one witness at a time, discuss it with lawyers involved. If you do so, it must be outside the hearing of anyone else. Any violation of this rule could result in your testimony not being considered, could also expose you to sanctions by the court. I'm going to take this a step further as we go about this proceeding. I want to make it clear to counsel and to all witnesses, you are not to read nor listen to any reports about this case from any source whatsoever, in addition to that instruction I've just given you. Counsel are now admonished to ensure that all their witnesses who are not here at this time, when they do arrive, that they're made aware of the rule and fully comply. Anything else?
We had spoken about an exception for Parker Schenecker, and the state would request he be accepted from the rule of sequestration.
Judge, I don't have any objection to him being present for the testimony, as he has every right to be present for the testimony, but the rule as far as discussing testimony would also be enforced for Mr. Schenecker as well.
Your Honor, we have, in consideration, not knowing the future, the state has contemplated a remote set of circumstances where Nancy Schenecker may be a rebuttal witness. I think that's a long shot, but she is present. I want to advise court and counsel, and would ask that she be accepted.
don't have any problem with that, Your Honor.
All right, okay, let's be clear. For Colonel Schenecker, he's allowed to remain in here, although he is admonished not to discuss this case or his testimony with anyone. He is present, and I believe there's a Ms. Nancy Schenecker.
She's present, Judge.
Same rule. By agreement between the parties, she'll be present. She'll not discuss any testimony or the case with anyone, okay?
Sir, anyone except the counsel for the case?
Except the lawyers, just as I just advised.
Yes, sir.
You can discuss it with the lawyers outside the hearing of anyone else. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Gentlemen, you can step out. You're called in individuals. Okay, other matters before we bring the jury in and get started.
No, sir, we're ready.
Jury. You can proceed. It'll be just a moment. I'll go ahead and let you know in case I didn't mention it. In the meantime, having heard about this with the juror, that lobby is not a good situation for that. I think we're all aware of that, but these are the facilities we have. I've made arrangements now that assembling in the morning and any return from such as lunch periods, that our jurors will not come into that lobby. They'll go through that lobby and straight into courtroom 53, which is now reserved for the full 2-week period as an assembly point for our jurors. So we'll do everything we can in that regard.
Thank you, Judge.
I just received an acknowledgement from the other judge on the floor that he's going to not only monitor that, but make sure everybody understands their obligation not to say anything in the presence of the juror. seated. State may call us next witness.
Venishan Shaw.
You swear or affirm the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so be out? Yes, sir. Please, right here.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell both your first and last name for the benefit of the court reporter in front of you?
Name is Venishan Shah, V-E-N-I-C-H-A-N-D. Last name is spelled S-H-A-H.
Mr. Shaw, sir, how old are you?
I'm 60 years old today.
Happy birthday, sir.
Thank you.
How are you employed, sir?
I'm employed at J.P. Morgan Chase as an IT manager.
Okay, and how long have you been with J.P. Morgan Chase?
31 years.
Okay. What is your marital status?
Married.
Do you have any children?
One son.
And how old is your son today?
He's 19.
Okay. Back in January of 2011, how old would he have been? Approximately.
Say 16.
Okay. In January of 2011, were you living with your family at a residence in Tampa Palms?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay. In January of 2011, was your son in high school?
Yes, sir.
What school did he attend?
King High.
And did you and your wife participate in a carpool to transport your son and other children to and from school?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Specifically in January of 2011?
Yes, sir, I did. We did.
What other school children were involved in the carpool that you drove?
Well, besides my son, there was one other girl who lived in our community, in Lancaster community, and there was Calix, who was in the adjoining community.
Would that be Calix Schenecker?
Calix Schenecker. Yes.
Did she also go to school, to your knowledge, at King High School?
Yes, sir, she did.
Okay. What part of the carpool did you drive?
Morning,
Okay, and why did you select or become assigned to mornings?
because my workplace is near where the school is, not too far from there.
Okay. On the morning of Friday, January 11th, 2011, the day the police ultimately found the bodies of the Schenecker children, did you drive carpool that morning?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What vehicle did you drive, sir?
I have a Toyota 4Runner.
Was your son in the vehicle with you that day?
Yes, sir.
And where was your first stop that morning?
First stop at the Janes, who's the other daughter, the other girl who was through carpool in my community.
Okay.
So we picked her up first.
And from there, where did you go?
Over to the next community in Ashington, I think, Estates, where Calix Schenecker lived.
Is that the very next or adjacent neighborhood next to your neighborhood?
Yes, as soon as you come out of the gate, the next gate on the right is the Schenecker's house.
Okay. So approximately how long did it take you to drive from where you picked up the other child, to get to the Scheneckers?
Yeah, up to less than 5 minutes.
Okay. And the Scheneckers neighborhood, was that a gated neighborhood?
Yes, sir.
Did you have access to the access code so you could gain entry?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in fact, on the morning of Friday, January 28th of 2011, did you drive up to the Schenecker residence?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what time you arrived?
Normally it's around, I would say, between 6:35 and 6:40
Okay.
a.m.
And what time was it that you had to get the children to King High School?
I think the bell went up at 7:10, if I remember right.
Okay. So somewhere between 6:35 and 6:40 was your normal time to get there? Okay. Sir, I'm going to hand to you 4 photographs that are already in evidence. On the back, they have evidence tags. They are number 1, 2, 3, 4 from top to bottom. And we're also, when I ask you about them, sir, you'll have those in front of you, and we'll also have them on the big screen, so whichever you choose to look at.
Sure.
States 1, please. If you look at that very first photograph, States Exhibit number 1, do you recognize that as a photograph of the Schenecker home?
Yes, sir.
When you normally arrived to pick up carpool in the mornings, did you normally see a vehicle in the driveway of the Scheneckers?
Normally, yes.
And what vehicle did you normally see?
It's a white van.
Okay. On this Friday, January 28th of 2011, was that white van in the driveway?
No, sir.
Okay. What was the routine that you had established with Calix as far as how she would exit the house upon your arrival? Did you honk, or how did that usually go?
No, normally I would drive up and go around the little roundabout and stop the car facing, going out of the community. So, and she would see the car, and normally she would come out as soon as she sees the car, and she's out of the house.
Did you usually have to wait for any length of time?
No, sir.
For Calix to come out?
No, sir.
Okay. This morning, however, on January 28th of 2011, did Calix Schenecker come out of the house shortly after you pulled up?
No, sir.
What did you do?
I waited a little while in the car, thinking she's going to be running late. After I think probably about 5 minutes, I said, let me go and check the door, go inside, go and ring the bell at least, see if she's running late, or maybe there's no car in the driveway, maybe they're gone somewhere. So.
Okay. So did you in fact get out of your 4Runner and walk up to the front door?
Yes, sir.
Sir, if you would look at the second photograph, States Exhibit number 2, please. Do you recognize that as a photograph of the front doors of the Schenecker home taken from approximately the sidewalk or the street?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you walk down this stone path to get to the front doors on that morning?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you would look at the next photograph, States Exhibit number 3, please. Did you go all the way up to the door?
Yes, sir.
And what did you do once you got to the door?
I rang the doorbell on the right side of the wall, of the side, my side, right side.
Okay. Did you actually hear the doorbell go off?
I don't remember that, sir.
Okay. Did you knock it off?
No, sir.
All right. Did you notice whether or not there were any lights on inside the house?
Yes, I saw lights inside the house. Yes, sir.
Let me draw your attention on the photograph in front of you to the window, or the door, excuse me, the glass on the left door with the handle to the door. Do you see 2 yellow objects shown in that center of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And now I would like to show you, look at the next photograph below, States number 4. 2 stickies that were later found on that glass door. Let me ask you, sir, when you walked up to the door that morning, were these 2 yellow stickies on the glass of that front door?
No, sir.
Are you certain?
Oh, I'm certain, yes, sir.
Okay. And the one note on the right is addressed carpool. Would you have made note of that if you had seen it? A note from carpool when Calix didn't come out and you were at the door?
Yeah, if I'd seen the note, yes, sir.
Okay. And you were looking through the glass and looking at the doors?
Yes, I peeked into the glass door
Okay.
to see if there's anybody in the house.
How long about did you spend at that front door?
I would say probably 2 to 3 minutes at least.
Okay. Did anyone ever come to the door from inside the house?
No, sir.
Did you ever see Calix Schenecker that morning?
No, sir.
After 2 or 3 minutes of the front door, at the front door with no response, what did you decide to do, sir?
I decided to go back to my car, and I called my wife to let her know that Kelly, has...
Please complete your answer.
As I called my wife from the car saying that I'm running late, Kelly Schenecker hasn't shown, so I have to leave now.
Okay. And you drove your son and the other child to school?
Yes.
Did you ever return to the Schenecker residence that day?
No, I did not.
Okay. And just for informational purposes, was your wife involved in driving parts of the carpool in the afternoons and other times?
Yes, she was.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Shaw.
Good afternoon.
Did you do the carpool for the entire school year of the 2010-2011?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And during that school year, was it always Calix, your son, and one other girl that lived in your
Yes.
community? Okay. The carpool itself, that was something that your wife, the other girl's mother, and Julie Schenecker were involved with coordinating?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And your wife would send out emails and plan a schedule?
That's correct.
Okay. And you were involved with dropping off because it was something located near your work?
Yes.
And were you involved or have knowledge of who was responsible for pickup?
No.
Okay.
No, I was not.
All right. So your job was to drop off a couple days a week, and that's what the limit?
No, it's every day, every
Okay.
morning. Every morning for 5 days a week.
Okay.
When school's open, I would be picking up the kids and
Okay.
taking them to school.
So every single morning, that was your responsibility for that school year?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, as far as if there was a time when the kids did not need to be picked up, did you ever have any one-on-one contact with the other mothers?
None.
Okay.
No.
That would have been something done with your wife?
That's correct.
Okay. And everybody had contact information, email, phone numbers, things like that for each other,
I believe so, yes.
as well as for the children?
I believe so.
Because the children have their phones, are of age where they all have their own phones?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When you drove up to the home, I'm going to show you the first photograph. Now, when you would drive up to the Schenecker home normally, you said you would go on the roundabout.
Yeah, at the end of the street is a dead end, so you have to turn your car around. So, driving on the right side of the road and turning around, so you're facing to leave.
Okay. Now, the Schenecker home is in a gated community the same as your home was, correct?
It's in a different community.
Okay, but they both have their own gates and
Yes.
codes? Now, when you drive into the Schenecker home community, the Schenecker home was on the first left past the gate, the street on the left.
That's correct.
Okay. And when you drive down that street, it's a cul-de-sac, like you said, a roundabout.
Yes.
Is that fair to say? And the Schenecker home is about 1 or 2 houses next to where the roundabout is.
I believe so.
And when you're turning to go out, your car would have been facing the opposite direction that these police cars in the photograph are facing in State's Exhibit 1.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So when you're in your 4Runner, do you pull up in the driveway or do you stay on
No,
the
it
road?
would be on the street.
Okay, so you're on the road facing the exit.
Yeah,
Okay, so your driver's side would be the furthest away from the door.
that's correct.
Who's in the front passenger side?
My son,
And one of the girl that you picked up would have been in the back, and then Calix would have gotten in the back seat.
that's correct.
That's what your routine was.
Yes,
And you said that normally what would happen is you would pull up and Calix would come out.
that's correct.
So you wouldn't normally need to ring on the doorbell or make a phone call or anything like that.
That's correct.
When you drove there that morning, this is January of 2011, right? Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
Right.
And on that morning, when you drove, you said the school started or the bell rang about 7:10?
I believe so. Recalling from my memory, I think it was around 7:10
Okay.
when I needed to be at the school.
What was your normal time that was your last pickup?
Calix was my last pickup, and I probably was about 6:45 or 6:40, around that time.
Now, King High School is not a high school that the 3 children were zoned for.
That's correct.
Okay, all 3 children were in the IB program at King High School?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're responsible for your own transportation if you're in a school that's outside of your zone?
I would not know that. All I know is I was carpooling.
Okay, so you know you're carpooling and the kids are all in a special program at that school?
That's correct.
Now, when you went, I would assume if the kids are in a special program, they don't want to be late for school,
That's correct.
and you have to get to work.
Yes.
What time did you start work normally?
Well, I can start at 8 o'clock, but I normally got to work by 7:30 when I was carpooling.
Okay, so by the time you get to your job, it's 7:30, which is pretty early in the morning. And around 6:35 or 6:40 in January of 2011, when you arrived to the Schenecker home, was it dark outside?
No, there was enough light.
What does that mean, enough light?
Enough light. I don't need a flashlight or something to walk outside my car and walk to the door.
Okay. Were the street lights still on outside?
I do not remember that.
Okay. When you pull up to the street, both of the doors have glass on them,
That's correct.
and you were able to see when you park your car that the inside has lights on.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so that wasn't unusual, I would assume, if you normally picked her up at that time.
That's correct.
Okay. So from the road, you're able to see that lights are on in the house?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's dark enough to be able to see that outside?
I could see the lights, yes.
Okay. Show us things up to 3. When you walked up to the door, and I'm showing you State's Exhibit 3, you said that the doorbell was on the right side.
That's what I remember, yes.
Okay, so you don't see it in the picture, but you remember it being on the right
I
side.
remember that, yes.
So when you walk up, you're going towards the right side, and then when you look inside of the door, are you looking in the right door?
I don't remember. I think it might be on the left side, but I don't remember. I know I was peeking through the glass to see if there's anybody at home, because I did not see the van in the driveway. So I was just checking to see if they were at home.
And the notes, you can see them in State's Exhibit 3. There are smaller notes that are on the left door. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay, and you didn't see those.
No, ma'am.
Is it possible that you missed seeing them
No, ma'am.
because you remember looking in that left door?
No, because I was standing out there for, a period which, you were looking at the door, and you would have not missed these notes if they were there.
Okay. Now, after Calix Schenecker doesn't come out of the home, you call your wife and let her know that you had to leave?
Yeah, go back in the car and give her a call just to let her know that I'm leaving. And she responded by saying that, go ahead, just leave. I'll call Calix later and see if she needs a ride to the school if she's running late.
Okay. Now, you find out later that day that there was some police presence at the Schenecker home
That's correct.
from your wife?
Yes.
Now, do you ever get interviewed by law enforcement?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever speak to a representative from the state attorney's office?
Yes, I did, Mr. Pruner.
And that was this year?
That was this year, yes.
Okay. This month, in April of 2014?
Last month, yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah,
That's okay.
April 2014, last month.
Yes.
That's the first time you talked to anybody about your observations on that day in January 2011?
That's correct.
Okay. Nothing further.
Redirect, counsel.
Nothing, thank you.
May this witness be excused.
Yes, sir.
Sir, you may step down and you're free to go.
Thank you.
State, you may call your next witness.
State calls Dr. Bernard Adams. You swear to affirm the testimony you will give with the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Please, right here.
Judge. Sir. And counsel, you may inquire.
Thank you, Judge. Counsels. Good afternoon, sir. Can you state your full name for the record and spell your last name for the court reporter, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Vernon Irvin Adams, and standard spelling on Adams, A-D-A-M-S.
And what are you currently doing for a living?
Currently, I'm employed as a professor of pathology at West Virginia University, where I'm the director of the autopsy service.
Okay, and how long have you held that position?
2.5 years.
Okay. And what are your duties at West Virginia University?
I teach hospital pathology residents, train them in the art of autopsy, and I do the same thing with pathologist assistant students.
Okay. Now, before joining West Virginia University, what kind of work did you do?
Before WVU, I was the chief medical examiner for Hillsborough County, right here, 21 years.
Okay. And what were your duties as the chief medical examiner?
They were twofold. I was the director of the medical examiner department, so that was an administrative position. And at the same time, I also did death investigations, just like the associate medical examiners who worked for me.
Okay.
About half and half.
Okay. And what is your education and training to be a medical examiner?
I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of Maine, an MD degree from Tufts University in Boston, and 6 years of training in pathology, the first year at New England Medical Center in Boston in anatomic pathology, 4 years at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota in anatomic and clinical pathology, and 1 year in forensic pathology at the Dade County Medical Examiner Department in Miami.
Okay. And how long have you been a medical doctor?
Since 1979.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I take it, is pathology or forensic pathology your specialty?
Yes.
Okay. And specifically, what is pathology?
The definition of pathology is the study of disease. It's probably easier to ask what a pathologist does. Most pathologists work in hospitals where they look at tissue and pap smears under the microscope and diagnose cancer or diagnose something other than cancer. And they're responsible for the administration of the hospital laboratories where blood tests are conducted.
Okay. And is there a subset of pathology called forensic pathology?
Yes, there is.
And what can you tell the jury about forensic pathology?
I'm going to go back to hospital pathologists because I left out the fact that they do a few autopsies. And then forensic pathologists do a lot of autopsies. They have particular expertise in wounds and in the determination of cause of death. And they're typically employed as coroner's pathologists in those states that have coroner systems, or as medical examiners in those states that have a medical examiner system.
Okay. And do you hold any special licenses or certificates in order to do this kind of work?
Yes.
Can you just tell us what that is?
I'm licensed to practice medicine in the state of Florida and in the state of West Virginia. I hold certificates of competence in anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology from the American Board of Pathology.
Okay. And you've indicated that you have to perform autopsies. About how many autopsies have you performed as of today?
It's somewhere between 6,000 and 6,500.
Okay. And have you ever been qualified as an expert in the area of forensic pathology in a court of law?
Yes.
How many times?
200 or 300. I don't keep track.
Okay. How many times have you been qualified as an expert in the area of forensic pathology in Hillsborough County, Florida?
Probably the majority of those times, a couple of hundred.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time we would offer Dr. Adams as an expert in the area of forensic pathology.
Objection, Judge.
May proceed, counsel.
No objection?
Without objection.
Okay.
Proceed.
Okay. Now, one of the duties you indicated that you have is that you perform autopsies. Can you tell the jury exactly what an autopsy is?
An autopsy is an examination of a dead body, often for the purpose of determining cause of death, but in a hospital it can be for confirmation or refutation of a diagnosis. It can be for obtaining evidence or for establishing identification or simply to determine the seat of disease or the extent of disease.
Okay. Taking you back to January 28th of 2011, were you working at that time as a medical examiner for Hillsborough County, Florida?
Yes.
And on that date, did you go, well, first, as part of your duties as a medical examiner, were you required to go to crime scenes?
Yes.
And why is that?
It's useful to view a body in the environment in which it's found because sometimes there can be correlations between objects in the environment and wounds on the body, or the extent of decomposition can be related to the conditions in the particular physical environment in which the body is found. It's also useful to begin relating with the police investigators. The police investigators have circumstantial information that helps to inform the autopsy diagnoses. And by the same token, the autopsy has findings that inform the detective's investigation, so they attend the autopsies frequently.
Okay. And going back specifically to January 28th of 2011, did you go to a crime scene at 16305 Royal Park Court in Tampa, Florida?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall about what time you got there?
I don't recall, but I'm looking at my notes, and it was 10 past 5 p.m.
Okay. And basically, what information did you have before you arrived on that scene?
I had information from Detective Duran that they had done a well-being check at the request of a family member and had discovered the bodies of 2 adolescent children, one in a van and one in the house.
And when you got there, did you actually see the bodies of who were later identified to you as Schenecker and Bo Schenecker?
Yes.
If you can you describe the body of Schenecker to the jury as you saw it?
She was on a bed upstairs, and there was a trail of blood leading from a computer in another room upstairs to the bed.
Okay. Did you make any observations about, let me rephrase this, based on what you saw of the body of Schenecker, was her state consistent with her having being killed on January 27th of 2011?
Yes.
Okay. And what is your basis for that, if any?
The body was not in a state of putrefact or decomposition, and I went to the scene on January 28th, so it fit.
Okay. And did you see the body of Bo Schenecker?
Yes.
What observations did you make of the body at the scene there?
His body was seated in the right front passenger seat of a van in the garage, in a seated position, slumped over.
Okay. And was the condition of his body consistent with having been killed on January 27th, 2011?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I take it at some point the bodies are moved to the medical examiner's office?
Yes.
Okay. And did you then perform an autopsy on the bodies of Schenecker and Bo Schenecker?
Yes.
Now, as part of the duties of the medical examiner or the medical examiner's office, are photographs taken of the bodies and the injuries or wounds of the body, on the
Yes.
body? Can I have a count?
Yes.
Sir, I'm going to show you what we've had marked as State's Exhibit 78A, 78B, 78C, 78D, 79A, 79B, 79C, and 79E for identification. If you could, can you take a look at those and let me know if you recognize these exhibits without showing the jury at this point?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize these exhibits for identification to be?
These photos show gunshot wounds on the bodies of Bo Schenecker and Calix Schenecker, and they show gunpowder stippling on the hand of Bo Schenecker, and 2 photographs depict bullets recovered from Calix Schenecker.
Okay. Are they fair and accurate photographs of the injuries and wounds of both Bo Schenecker and Calix Schenecker and the projectiles recovered from the body of Calix Schenecker?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move into evidence 78A, B, C, and D, and then 79A, B, C, and E for identification. The state's 78 A through D, and 79A, B, C, and E.
Judge, should I approach this for a moment?
Yes, sir. Composite 78 A through D, and State's Exhibit 79A, B, C, and E are received without objection.
And doctor, would it help explain your testimony in regards to the wounds if you were to refer to the photographs that were photographs of the autopsy?
Yes.
Okay. If I could have the doctor step down
You may step down, sir.
and move to publish.
You may.
First, doctor, I want to refer you to what's been identified as 79A. And if you can, I'm going to stand over here. Can you tell us?
You need to relocate, counsel, so you can see.
Thank you, Judge. Can you see it? Can you tell us what we're seeing in States 79A for the jury's benefit?
This is a frontal photograph of the face of the body of Calix Schenecker. And you see a lot of darkening around the lips. The photograph goes from the nose down to the chin, and there's an identifying case number here that you can see. There's a defect in the lower lip and a lot of blackening around it. That's scorching from the flame from the muzzle. This is an entrance gunshot wound.
Okay. The scorching, you indicated that the darkness around the lips is scorching from the flame of the gun. Does that give you any indication as to how close the gun was to the mouth and face of Calix Schenecker at the time that it was fired?
Yes.
About what's the approximate distances that you can determine from that kind of scorching?
It would be within a few inches.
If we can, step down so the other members of the jury can see her. Next, I want to refer you to 79B. Can you tell us what we're looking at in 79B?
This shows the back of the head of calyx, and the entrance gunshot wound on the back of the head has been shaved in order to see the wound. You can see the right ear on the right side of the photograph. And there's a case number labeled just below the wound.
Okay, and how do we know this is an entrance wound to a gunshot wound?
Well, the easiest answer is that there was no accident. There certainly is no fouling or stippling or scorching here. Any gunpowder would have been filtered out by the hair.
And we're bringing you back to 79A. Can you tell us what the path, the direction of this bullet was going through Ms. Schenecker's head?
Yes. This bullet went through the front teeth, tip of the tongue, and then up into the socket around the eye, between the eye and the bone, going up through the maxillary sinus to get to that point, and that's where it ended.
Okay, and at the end of that pathway, did you recover some kind of projectile?
Yes.
Now, how would this bullet affect Ms. Schenecker going through her brain through that way?
It didn't go through her brain.
Or through her skull?
It went through the deep facial bones.
Okay.
And ended in the eye socket without penetrating into through the cranium. It didn't go through the brain. It didn't go through the brain case.
Okay, and how would this bullet have affected Ms. Schenecker? If you can give any opinions on that.
If she had lived long enough, she would have had bleeding from those deep facial bones coming out through the mouth. It could have been profuse. It's possible that that the impact of the bullet up in the orbital bone could have caused a brief cerebral concussion and a brief loss of consciousness.
Looking at 79B, can you tell us what the direction and the path of this bullet was?
This bullet went from back to front. It perforated the skull and then went through the right occipital lobe of the cerebrum, that is the higher part of the brain. And then it went through the midbrain, which is the highest part of the brainstem. And then it came to rest after penetrating the cavernous sinus, which is a large, thick-walled vein, and lacerating the left internal carotid artery.
And what effect would this bullet's path and direction have caused to Ms. Schenecker?
The energy loading from this bullet would have caused a stunning effect from the shock wave. And I know from the fact that the internal carotid artery was torn, but there wasn't much blood there, that it wasn't pumping, so she died within a few seconds.
And I take it this bullet would have rendered her unconscious?
Yes.
And she would have died within a few seconds?
Yes.
And is this the bullet that would have killed her?
Yes.
And at the end of the path for wound 79B, was a projectile recovered?
Yes.
I'll show you what we got marked. It's exhibit 79C and E. Can you tell us what we're looking at in these two photographs?
Yes. These are the bullets that are recovered. In both instances, and the jacketing is separate from the lead slot. They're deformed in packets, so they're easily recognized in the photograph. So the top photograph, the one that's holding the top,
Which is 79C for the record.
this is labeled, it's printed with the medical examiner case number, the name Schenecker, and the date of the autopsy. And in my handwriting, it says calyx, bullet, region of sphenoid bone. That's where that cavernous sinus is, right beside the sphenoid bone. My name, V. Adams, and date. And then the photograph that we're holding on the bottom
And for the record, that's 79E.
is also labeled in my handwriting, calyx and bullet, left orbit.
You indicated that the jacket was ripped off with a projectile. Can you, there's appears to be copper-colored metal and then a grayish, dark gray copper-colored metal. Which is which? Which is the jacket? Which is the projectile?
The copper thing is the jacket that peeled off the slide. The gray colored thing is the lead core.
And you did recover actually I'll just do it. You did recover the lead jacket, well, the jacket and the lead cores.
What you see in the photographs is what I recovered, yes.
I'm going to show you what we've had marked as 79D1, and inside is 79F. And 79D for identification. Can you tell us if you recognize these two objects?
Yes, these are the evidence envelopes that were photographs with my handwriting on them. There's additional handwriting on them at this point that occurred subsequent to the photograph being taken by me. But these are the same envelopes.
Okay, and are these envelopes in the same or substantially same condition as when you last saw them, except for the additional writing?
Yes.
And they're in a sealed condition?
Yes.
And both of these objects, 79F for identification and 79D for identification, those contain, these envelopes contain the projectiles and the jacketing recovered from the body of Caleb Schenecker?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time we move into evidence states 79D1, 79F, and 79E for identification of states 79D1, 79D, and 79F.
No objection, Judge.
Proceed without objection.
Now, based on what you saw of the victim's injuries to the head, are you able to give any sequence of shots?
No.
And in reference to Caleb Schenecker, did you see any other injuries on her of any significance?
Yes, if I can refer to my
Yes.
notes so I don't have to retract anything. Thank you. She had linear abrasions on the front of the left thigh and linear abrasions on the right shin.
Okay, can you give any opinion as to how those injuries occurred?
I can give you a reasonable possibility.
Okay. Well, are they consistent with the body being dragged and maybe on a chair and then lifted up into a bed?
Yes,
Okay. Why do you say that?
because you asked me.
Okay. But I mean, is there any specific evidence that you think is consistent with that?
Well, a linear abrasion is essentially a scrape. And so a scrape fits with the circumstance of a body being dragged. It's no more complicated than that.
Okay. And based on your autopsy of the body of Caleb Schenecker, have you reached a conclusion as to the cause of death?
Yes.
What is that?
She died from that gunshot wound to the back of the head.
Okay. And did you also perform an autopsy on the body of Bo Schenecker?
Yes, I did.
And would referring to the photographs of that autopsy help you explain your testimony?
Yes.
Okay. First, I'm going to have you, if we can have you step over here again. I'm going to show you what we've had marked. State 78A. Can you tell us what we're seeing in state 78A?
This is a photograph of the left side, the head of Bo Schenecker, and it shows two gunshot wounds. The hair in the temple region has been shaved to show this wound better, and you can see the perforation in the skin. And then on the scalp surrounding it, where it's been shaved, you can see pink dots. So his hair being on the thin side permitted some gunpowder to get through. and impact the skin, creating these red dots, or little abrasions and divots. We call it gunpowder stippling.
In order for there to be that kind of pattern of stippling around the gunshot wound, how close would the muzzle of the firearm have to be?
The gunpowder for a hypothetical standard handgun will go out to about 15 inches. When a bullet discharges from the muzzle of a weapon, not only does a bullet come out, but there are flakes of partially burned and unburned gunpowder that issue with the bullet, and they spread out. But they don't travel that far. They go up to about 15 inches with the exception of a few strays. So this pattern would be certainly less than 15 inches. At 15 inches, you get a wide, sparse pattern. When it's very close, you get a narrow, dense pattern. So this is more on the narrow side, and it's kind of a medium density pattern. So this would be a few inches or maybe 8 inches. I can't give you an exact number, but it's close range.
And around the nose and the mouth, there's darker discoloration. Can you tell us what that is?
There's an entrance gunshot wound of the nostril, and around it there's some gunpowder stippling, but also some scorching of the abraded skin around that perforation. So this is a very close range wound, similar to that found on his sister.
And the wound that's above the left ear, it's in the left side of the skull, can you tell us what the direction and the path of that wound is?
This bullet went from left to right and backward with respect to the body. And the path, after going through the skull and brain, it emerged on the other side of the head, perforating the skull from the inside out.
Okay, and how would this, the path of this bullet affect Bo Schenecker?
Well, it caused instant loss of consciousness and death within seconds or minutes.
And the wound that is around the mouth and nose area, can you tell us what the path and the direction of that wound is?
This bullet went upward and from left to right. It went through the deep facial structures and then along the socket of the right eye on the outside part of that. And then it perforated the skull proper, but without perforating the dura mater, which is the tough fibrous casing on the inside of the skull. And that's where it came to rest.
And was any kind of projectile recovered at the end of that path, wound path?
It was not. When I said it came to rest, that's incorrect. It perforated. It went all the way through.
How would that wound have affected Bo Schenecker?
It's possible that by itself it could have caused a cerebral concussion and transient loss of consciousness and some bleeding from the deep facial bones had it been the only wound.
The wound, which wound is the wound that killed Bo Schenecker?
The one to the hair-bearing region of the scalp here that went through the brain.
If I can just throw the nerves. Based on your autopsy of Bo Schenecker, could you give any ideas to the sequence of the two bullets or the two shots?
No.
I want to refer you to what we've had marked to state, that is state 78B. Can you tell us what we're seeing in this photograph?
This is the right side of the head of Bo Schenecker, and this shows the two exit wounds. The hair has been shaved in order to photograph both of them and depict those wounds.
The lower wound, exit wound, which wound on state 78A does that correspond to?
That corresponds to the wound of the entrance wound on the face. The one that's higher and more toward the back of the head, near the vertex of the head, that corresponds to the wound in the temple.
For you to 78C. Can you tell us what we're looking at in this photograph?
This is a frontal shot of the face of Bo Schenecker, and this shows the gunshot wound of the nostril and the surrounding scorching and then the stippling outside that.
And again, that would have been a close range.
Yes.
The gun would have been fired close range.
Close range.
Doctor, I'm going to refer you to 78D. Can you explain to the jury what we're seeing in 78D?
This is a photograph of the back of the left hand of Bo Schenecker, and it shows a tight cluster of gunpowder stippling on the back of the hand. It also shows a little bit of fingerprint ink, which is mentioned just so you can properly interpret the photograph and not wonder what that gray stuff is.
Okay. And the fact that they're stippling on, well, I'm using my hand for demonstrative purposes, where on my left hand would that be?
It's on the back of the hand in relationship to the base of the forefinger and fingers.
Thank you, doctor. You can have a seat. Sit down, please. Now, the stippling that you saw on the left hand, would that be consistent with, at the time the gun was fired, his hand being up near the left side of his head?
Yes,
Would that be considered potentially a defensive wound?
it could be.
And what is a defensive wound?
A defensive wound is typically a wound of the hand or forearm that's caused when the upper extremity is used to try to shield the victim from whatever an assailant is using to attack.
Okay. Based on your training and experience in the autopsy you performed on the body of Bo Schenecker, do you have an opinion as to the cause of death?
Yes, his death was caused by the gunshot wound to the side of the head.
Okay. The projectiles that you recovered from the body of Kalik Schenecker, can you give any opinion as to their caliber or what kind of bullets they are?
I can give you a general description. You can just bear with me for a second.
I'm going to object.
You may approach him.
Now, after performing the autopsies on the body of Kalik Schenecker and Bo Schenecker, was that the extent of what you did in this case?
Yes, until you told me there was a trial that I needed to come to.
Okay. Are you able to give any opinion, and I may have asked this already, are you able to give any opinion as to the sequence of shots based on your autopsy of Bo Schenecker?
You did ask that for both of them, and the answer is still no opinion.
Okay. Thank you, doctor.
You're welcome.
No other questions?
You may cross-examine, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Adams, I believe you mentioned earlier in your testimony that you did go to the scene in this situation, as you did in many other instances of homicide, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And I think that you mentioned that you had specific conversations with police investigators. In this case, I believe you said Detective Duran. You spoke to him regarding the police viewpoint of what had happened.
Yes.
And I know that you had mentioned in your earlier testimony that this was a help to you in some respects when you talked to the investigators. Also, it gave you a chance to give feedback to them. Maybe you could help them with your findings. And I take it that's the intent of that kind of conversation or dialogue?
Yes.
In no way, shape, or form, though, would your synopsis of what you were told by the police officer stand in terms of being actual evidence of that actually having happened, correct?
Right.
In this situation, you arrived and the children were still there, and based on your experiences as well as maybe what was told to you, I take it you had the impression that the bodies had not been moved prior to your arrival by police?
That's correct.
And I think you had mentioned that you found Bo Schenecker in the slumped over in the front of the van, and I think you mentioned you found Calix Schenecker in a bed upstairs in one of the bedrooms, correct?
Yes.
And those bodies had not been moved by police. They were undisturbed.
Right.
You mentioned earlier in your testimony, and I believe that you even looked at some photographic evidence of that you saw a blood trail, and it gave you the impression that Calix Schenecker had been shot at some place other than where you found the body. Is that accurate?
I'm going to refer to my notes, make sure I didn't speak on. Yes. There was a computer, a chair in front of it with blood on the seat, carpet beneath with coarse and medium blood spatter, and a double track of blood corresponding to the wheels of the chair running from this area to the bedroom.
And those are things you saw with your own eyes when you went to the scene, correct?
Yes.
Okay, you weren't relying on Detective Duran or any other police investigator for that. You actually saw that.
I did.
Dr. Adams, I want to draw your attention, kind of compartmentalize your testimony and speak first about Calix Schenecker, if you could take note of her autopsy and your findings regarding her. You got the impression that she had been shot somewhere else besides where you found her, and I think you just addressed that a second ago, correct?
Yes.
You mentioned that in this situation, neither bullet exited from Calix Schenecker, and I think you recovered those. You showed the jury the pictures of the recovered, I believe, jacket as well as the projectile, correct?
Yes.
And I believe that you mentioned regarding Calix Schenecker that you were unable as a forensic pathologist to sequence the shots to Calix Schenecker, correct?
That's correct.
You can't tell which one came first or which came second?
Right.
In any event, your opinion is that in all likelihood Calix Schenecker lost consciousness almost immediately, but maybe you can't really say with exactness whether she died within seconds or a minute or whatever, correct?
Right. She lost consciousness immediately, and she died almost immediately, within seconds.
Okay. And I think you mentioned also, and just by way of making sure I'm not confused by your testimony, you indicated that the entrance wound, the shot that you presume was the cause of death for Calix Schenecker, was administered from a few inches away. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, is that the best estimate of distance, a few inches? I take it you can't be any more precise than that, correct?
Well, let's backtrack just a second. You're talking about the fatal wound for Calix.
Yes, I am.
With that particular wound, there was an abundant scalp hair which filter out any gunpowder. So I had no range of fire opinion for that particular wound. I had an opinion for the non-lethal wound to the face.
That was the one that was really close up.
Yes.
The other wound that I'm referring to now, it could be anywhere from 8 feet away to closer than that, I take it.
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned that the shot didn't actually go through her brain, but there's some sort of a shock kind of effect of the bullet entering into her head, and that would have been the cause of death?
Oh, it did go through the brain, and there was a shock effect.
And your opinion as the cause of death was that shot, even though whatever path it took, it caused the shock wave effect in her head?
Yes, it did.
Okay. You also found in Kayla Schenecker some abrasions that you felt were consistent with her having been moved or dragged in some fashion?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I want to draw your attention to Bo Schenecker. In his autopsy, you found no evidence of soot or muzzle imprint, but there was stippling, and I think you pointed that out to the jury, correct?
On one of the wounds, the wound to the side of the head,
Correct, the one that you said was the fatal wound.
right, where there was hair.
Right. And I think you were able to conclude or opine that that shot had been administered from anywhere from maybe an inch or two to 8 inches away, but in that area?
Yes,
Okay. In the case of Bo Schenecker, both bullets exited, so those were recovered and eventually shown to you? But you didn't recover them as part of the autopsy, correct?
well, I can't answer that question yes or no because there's an internal contradiction, so I'll break it down. Both bullets exited, which means I did not recover them,
Right.
and I never saw those bullets.
You indicated that, and I think you showed a picture to the jury of the back of Bo Schenecker's hand, and you indicated that what you could opine was that it was consistent with possibly being a defensive wound, correct?
Yes,
Isn't it true that it could also have been a non-defensive wound? Maybe just the hand was in proximity to the other wounds that he suffered? Is that accurate?
yes.
Okay. And in Bo Schenecker's case, he also lost consciousness immediately, in your opinion?
With the infliction of the wound to the side of the
To
head,
the side of the
yes.
head?
Yeah.
Okay. And again, with respect to Bo Schenecker, you were unable to sequence the shots and determine which came first or second or anything of that nature?
That's correct.
Judge, I ask to have a moment, please.
Yes, sir.
Judge, I have no other questions for Dr. Adams.
Redirect.
No other questions? Thank you, Judge.
May this witness be excused?
Yes, Judge.
Mr. Tran?
Yes, Judge.
Sir, you may step down and you're free to go.
Thank you.
Statement called for next witness.
Officer Bill Cockerless.
You swear or affirm the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and the truth that we got? I do. Okay, right here.
Name for our counsel.
Good afternoon, sir.
How you doing? Good morning. Afternoon.
Whatever, doesn't matter. Sir, please state your name, spell your last name for the court reporter, please.
It's William Capoulas.
And would you spell the last name for us?
It's Copulos.
How are you employed, sir?
Police officer with the Tampa Police Department.
How long have you been with Tampa Police Department, sir?
A little over 7 years now.
What's your present assignment?
Patrol in New Tampa.
Were you working and on duty on the morning of Friday, January 28th of 2011?
That's correct.
As a patrol officer, sir?
Correct.
What district or part of town did you patrol?
It's a District 2 off Bruce B. Downs Boulevard, New Tampa.
Did that area also include Tampa Palms?
Correct.
Tampa Palms a gated residential community at the time?
There's certain developments that are gated, certain neighborhoods.
At or about 7:39 a.m. on Friday, January 28th of 2011, were you at a roll call with fellow officers in your squad?
I was.
And was that in a district office or some other remote location?
That was in the parking lot of Movie Co. near Donna Michelle and Bruce B. Downs.
Now, what is a roll call so the jury can understand?
It's a gathering place where you meet to speak about the day's incidents and what you need to take care of for the day.
What was your shift that day?
My shift, it was a morning shift. I believe it was 7 in the morning to 6:30 at night.
And so roll call would have been at the beginning of your day?
Correct, 7 o'clock.
While you were at roll call, did you receive a communication from Tampa Police Department Communications directing you to a residence in Tampa Palms?
That's correct. It came out as an information report, attempt to contact with a possible Baker Act.
And was that address that you were directed to go to, 16305 Royal Park Court?
That's correct.
Okay, and that address is in Hillsborough County, sir?
Correct.
Were you driving in a single car that day?
I was, yes.
And did you actually drive to that residence?
I did.
Was an officer in Nobles, Gregory Nobles, on your squad at that time?
He was, and he also drove to the scene.
Separate
The call.
from you?
Correct.
Did you arrive at or about the same time to that residence?
We left roll call at the same time, and we arrived about the same time.
Did you come to learn that to be the residence of the Schenecker family?
Later on, I did. Correct.
State's Exhibit 1, please. Exhibit 1. Showing you what's introduced into evidence already as State's Exhibit number 1. Do you recognize this as the front of the residence that you responded to in the early morning, or approximately 7:40 a.m. on January 28, 2011?
That's correct.
As you face this photograph, to the right of the photograph, would that have been the end of the street or a roundabout or a circle?
To the best of my knowledge, that was a roundabout to the right of that picture.
Did you pull up to the house in your vehicle?
Correct.
Did you and Officer Nobles approach the house?
We did. I approached the residence, and I looked through the glass on the garage door, and I could see a vehicle inside. And I notified Officer Noble that there was a vehicle inside.
Officer Noble informed us that he was unable to look through the glass because of his height. Just for the written record, how tall are you, sir?
6'3".
Okay. Did you have any problems seeing inside the glass windows to the garage?
No.
Did you see a vehicle in the garage?
Correct.
Okay. And was that information in any manner inconsistent with the information you'd received that directed you to the call?
It wasn't inconsistent. It was, just our normal approach.
All right. So, having seen the automobile in the garage, what did you and Officer Nobles do next?
We then approached the front door, and the front door actually had a glass portion in the center of it, and there were Post-it notes stuck on the front door, and we read the Post-it notes. It said something to the effect of "gone to New York," letting the carpool know that they're not actually at the location. I then...
Okay, let me interrupt you there, sir.
Sure.
Would you show stage 4, please?
Can we come over?
Yes, ma'am. About a 20-minute comfort break. As I send the jury out, I'm going to remind you, as I will at every break, that we're in the courts of trial, not to discuss this case or what we're doing in this case. You're not to discuss that among yourselves, not to discuss it with anyone else, not to allow anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. Again, not to speak at all with attorneys, witnesses, or defendant about any subject until your deliberations are finished, not to read nor listen to any reports about the case from any source whatsoever, not to do any sort of research, gather information about, or communicate about the case or the people or places involved through any means, including all those electronic devices. We'll give you that comfort break.
All right.
You can be seated. Jury has exited the courtroom. Officer Kapoulis, you're going to be instructed not to discuss the case or your testimony with anyone until you return to the stand. If you want to take a step down, take this break yourself. 20 minutes.